Welcome to the intersection of city politics and everyday life. I'm Brian Lehrer. Compared to most speeches by Donald Trump, it was a modest plea for national unity and bipartisanship. In his first State of the Union message last night, President Trump spoke of one American family and protecting citizens of every background, color, religion, and creed. But his frequently divisive tone returned when he got to immigration. He linked the current system to terrorism and crime. He blamed the brutal murder of two Long Island teenagers on loopholes in the law. As he challenged both parties to pass his version of immigration reform, the tone of America First reappeared. Note the four-word phrase at the end of this sentence.
My duty and the sacred duty of every elected official in this chamber is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because Americans are dreamers too.
Americans are dreamers too. The reference, of course, is to the undocumented young people, the dreamers, brought to the U.S. as children. In September, Trump announced the end of President Obama's DACA program, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, that has been protecting about 800,000 of these young people, 42,000 in New York alone, from deportation. In last night's speech, the president urged Congress to accept what he called a down-the-middle compromise on immigration, repeating a plan the White House proposed last week. The dreamers, he said, can stay in America, even those who did not apply for DACA status, so up to 1.8 million could become legal residents, and even have a 10 to 12-year path to citizenship. That appears to be a victory for Democrats. It has the far right calling Trump Amnesty Don. But the DACA concession may not add up to a down-the-middle compromise. In exchange, Trump not only wants funding for his wall and other security measures, but a drastic cut, nearly 25%, in legal immigration and a shift toward what he considers a merit-based system. As Trump called for an end to so-called chain migration, there was grumbling and there were some hisses from the floor.
Under the current broken system, a single immigrant can bring in virtually unlimited numbers of distant relatives. Under our plan, we focus on the immediate family by limiting sponsorships to spouses and minor children.
The White House has called this a take-it-or-leave-it deal, but it probably will need to be further negotiated if it's to pass Congress before the government again runs out of money next Thursday and there could be another shutdown. There was no mention in last night's speech of another immigration crisis Trump has triggered, the lifting of temporary protected status for hundreds of thousands living and working here legally for years. That's our next topic today. Since 1990, the federal government has allowed certain undocumented people who are already residents in the USA to have sanctuary under what's known as TPS, Temporary Protected Status. This if their home country faced armed conflict, environmental disaster, or other extraordinary conditions. Those countries have included Haiti, El Salvador, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. But the Trump administration recently crossed three of those off the list. So 2,500 Nicaraguans, 200,000 El Salvadorans, and 50 or 60,000 Haitians, 5,200 in New York City, have only until next year to pack their bags. Haiti first got onto the TPS list after the 2010 earthquake, which killed perhaps 300,000 people and left perhaps 1.5 million homeless. Since then, Haiti has faced two hurricanes and a cholera epidemic. Nonetheless, many Haitians living here in New York must prepare to move back to the island. Is Haiti in any shape to receive them? What about their families in Haiti who count on their U.S. earnings? Can the lifting of TPS for Haiti be challenged? Let's begin with those questions. Then later, meet a young man born here whose parents must, unless things change, move back to El Salvador after 20 years in the USA. First, Haiti, though. Joining us is New York Assemblywoman Rodneyse Bichotte, whose district includes the Flatbush, Ditmas Park section of Brooklyn, which some like to call Little Haiti. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start at the beginning, because a lot of New Yorkers, a lot of Americans don't know much about Haiti at all. What's the population of Haitians in New York, and what's sort of the origin of that? Was there a big influx at a certain time?
Well, for one, let me just start by saying that the numbers that are reflected on the data are severely undercounted. They're saying there's about 100,000 Haitians in New York City, but in actuality, it's probably closer to 500,000. We have a large Haitian population because of immigration status. Many of the households don't participate in the census. And Haitians actually have started traveling to New York City, I would say, since in the late 60s. My parents actually migrated in the late 60s, had me in the 70s. It's been certainly a big influx. We were probably one of the countries that weren't granted visas. The other Caribbean islands were a lot more than ours. But now we are the largest Caribbean population in New York City, which is why you mentioned Flatbush is being called Little Haiti, which will officially be designated as Little Haiti.
Little Haiti.
Yes.
It's really a very diverse neighborhood. It could be little a lot of things, right?
Could be a lot of little, yes.
And there are other areas in greater New York that have Haitian population concentrations, right? Like Spring Valley in Rockland County, around there.
Exactly. Spring Valley. There's even a large population in Poughkeepsie, Elmont, New York, Long Island. There's a large population. We have members of communities of Haitian descent in Buffalo, believe it or not. So we're all over. We're in Harlem, Brooklyn, Queens, as you know, is like the second largest county in New York City that holds Haitians. So we are all over. So to say 100,000, very undercounted.
So explain TPS further. Again, for people who aren't familiar with it, temporary protected status. This covers people not who came here because of the earthquake. They already had to be here, right?
Yes. So there were many Haitians who were residing in the U.S. Either they were visiting, they were probably here legally or illegal, whatever the case may be. And
if they were legal, then they didn't need temporary protected status, right?
Exactly. And then the earthquake happened on January 12, 2010, where over 300,000 of Haitians or people who were in Haiti at that time died, leaving the country in still a very disastrous state right now. As you mentioned, cholera is still to be an epidemic. People are homeless. People are still looking for shelter and still looking for stability. So in 2010, obviously there was a cry for help. A lot of the Haitians, a lot of their families were affected. People didn't know what to do. And so TPS was granted to the hundreds and thousands actually of Haitians who are residing in the U.S. I believe about 50 to 60,000.
And what do you say to the argument that Trump is making that it is called temporary protected status? It's not supposed to be if there's an earthquake in a country or a hurricane in a country, everybody who's here from that country gets to stay here for the rest of their life. There must be some point where it's sufficiently cleaned up or recovered from that people can go back under temporary protected status.
Unfortunately, Haiti is not in a condition to accept these thousands of Haitians. And that's why they have the right, they have the civil rights constitutionally under the 14th Amendment to stay here in the United States. The United States owe these Haitians under the temporary protected status, and even just Haitians in general, as we contributed a lot to the U.S. history, to protect these individuals under the equal protection law, as well as due process, that these individuals have no place to go. Again, the conditions in Haiti cannot be sustained right now, cannot take any of these Haitians. And you have to understand, there has been mass denationalizing, deportations in other places who are kicking out Haitians, like, for example, Dominican Republic and other Caribbean islands, where a lot of these Haitians who were, for generations and generations, were living in a particular country are now being pushed out. So you have that issue. You have the issue of the conditions of water not being available, homelessness still to be a big issue. You have instability in government seems to be an issue. Haiti is just not in a condition. Not only that, but it also impacts the U.S. because a lot of these TPS holders have been contributing economically to the U.S. economy.
Haiti, as you know, was one of the countries that the president referred to, along with El Salvador and countries in Africa, with that expletive, as whole countries. Mm-hmm. How did that make you feel?
I wasn't surprised. I was, of course, very upset. And it just opened wound because Haiti and Haitians have been attacked for many years by everybody, I would say. In 1990, as you know, the Food Drug Administration and the American Red Cross had said that Haiti was the cause of AIDS. And in 1990, we had people who marched over the bridge. It was historical, thousands and thousands, like never ever before, to say that these are racist comments and it should be retracted and we should be treated fairly and just. So in that same manner, you know, Haitians just have been going through so much. It just opened wounds in terms of...
And we should say the medical community then took that back. They realized that it was an error, right? I remember those days.
Yes,
and they talked about the 4 H's that were risks for AIDS.
Yes.
Heroin users because they shared blood by injecting needles, homosexuals, gay men, hemophiliacs because of blood transfusions, and Haitians. Well, which one does not belong? Haitians because it's not a behavior.
Right, exactly.
And they finally figured that out.
Right.
But in some circles, and apparently including with Donald Trump even recently, that stigma persists. In our final minute, how hopeful do you feel that something can be turned around? Saving the Haitians who are here under TPS was part of the Dick Durbin, Lindsey Graham deal that they proposed to the president, and his response was to use that expletive and say no, but they're on somebody's radar screen down there.
Let's just put it this way. If TPS is not included in any type of immigration deal, we are going to expect another shutdown. In the U.S., over the past years, we have generated a number of Haitian elected officials. And in fact, we had just met in Miami to call to action, to put our agenda together, working with our congressmen and women, working with our U.S. senators, to push to make sure that not only that TPS is part of the immigration deal, or there will be a shutdown, but also to look at these other discriminatory practices against immigration. For example, President Trump has barred H-2AB visas and visas, which bars any Haitians with low skills to come into the U.S. He's taken that away. So there is hope because there was just we just witnessed what happened in terms of the shutdown. So
do you want to make that case about those visas? Because a lot of people are hearing Trump's call for merit-based immigration and thinking, why would we allow a lot of people with low skills into the country?
The case that he's making is contradictory because he's allowing other countries with low skill to come and enter with the H-2A and H-2B visas.
Assemblywoman, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Before we meet our next guest and move from Haiti to El Salvador in this discussion of temporary protected status, there was an official response to the State of the Union message last night that's relevant. The Democratic Party chose Massachusetts Congressman Joseph Kennedy III to speak, the grandson of Robert F. Kennedy, addressed an audience gathered in the auto shop of a technical school in Fall River, Massachusetts. He addressed immigration, not specific policy, but values and history.
That is our story. It began the day our founding fathers and mothers set sail for a new world, fleeing oppression and intolerance. It continued with every word of our independence the audacity to declare that all men are created equal, an imperfect promise for a nation struggling to become a more perfect union. It grew with every suffragette step, every freedom rider's voice, and with every weary soul we welcome to our shores. And to all the dreamers out there watching tonight, let me be absolutely clear. Ustedes son parte de nuestra historia. Vamos a luchar por ustedes y no nos vamos a alejar. You are part of our story. We will fight for you, and we will not walk away. America, we carry that story on our shoulders. You swarmed Washington last year to ensure that no parent has to worry if they can afford to save their child's life. You proudly marched together last weekend, thousands deep, on the streets of Las Vegas and Philadelphia and Nashville. You sat high atop your mom's shoulders and held a sign that read, "Build a wall, and my generation will tear it down."
Massachusetts Congressman Joseph Kennedy. All right, let's turn to El Salvador, which, like Haiti, has lost its protected status designation. Earlier this month, there was an op-ed in the New York Times, maybe you saw it, entitled "President Trump is Breaking Up My Family," written by our next guest, Rodman Serrano. Rodman, 23 years old, a U.S. citizen, will graduate this fall from Stony Brook University. He's afraid that by then, his parents will have been forced to move back to El Salvador, considered one of the most violent countries in the world. He fears for them and his younger sisters, who, like him, would remain here without their parents. Rodman's is one story of many. 200,000 Salvadorans have been told to go home. Welcome, Rodman Serrano.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your own story? You're the first in your family to go to college?
I am. Great. So my name is Rodman Serrano. I'm from Bayshore in Long Island. I'm the son of Salvadorian immigrants. My parents both came to this country in the early 1990s, and right now we currently live in Bayshore, New York. And they raised me and my two sisters. We went through, the school system, all with the help of my parents. And currently, I'm a student at CUNY Stony Brook, studying to become a teacher. And to me, it's one of my dream schools. It's made my parents so happy. It's made me very happy because I was able to show my parents that I really honor and take seriously all of the sacrifices that they've made for me and my two sisters. And to be able to go there every day, I feel a tremendous responsibility to them and to my community to get an education and to give back.
It's such a classic immigrant story, seeing your achievements through the lens of honoring your parents, not just your individual accomplishments as a reflection of yourself. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people who have been here a while more see things in individual terms and less in family terms.
Mm-hmm. I really see this. I see like any success that I had or that I will have in the future is due to a network of support that I've received from family members, from cousins, from friends, from school teachers. Really a strong community that's always been there supporting me and making sure that I do and that I'm able to achieve my dreams.
So tell us more about your parents. When did they come to this country and under what circumstances? Great.
So my mom and my dad both arrived to this country in the early 1990s, and they arrived towards the end of the Salvadorian Civil War. They were escaping the danger of violence, of lack of job opportunities, and so they came to this country with a vision, and to them, they wanted to achieve the American dream. To my parents, the American dream was that me and my two sisters will be able to move ahead in life, that we will get a great education, and that we will live a life with peace. And these are things that I feel that I can achieve, and it's all because of so much of the support that my parents have given us.
They got temporary protected status how long ago?
My parents have had TPS, and also hundreds of thousands of Salvadorans have had TPS since 2001. And this was due to a deadly earthquake that devastated the entire country. So my parents were already living here, and the earthquake happened, and there was no real chance that by returning that they would find any sense of peace or security. So TPS was given to El Salvador, and since then my parents have had the opportunity and the protection to stay in this country, to be there for me and my two sisters. And to my family, TPS is the only form of protection that I've ever had. So we're really grateful for this program.
You were telling me off the air that when you were little, your parents frequently worked 2 jobs, so you didn't see them as much as you would have liked. Mm-hmm. What did they do for a living at that time?
So my parents, when they first arrived to this country, they worked multiple jobs, sometimes 2 or 3 jobs at the same time. And they were random jobs, whether it's working at a factory, a car wash, bakery, cleaners. They would work as many hours as they can, so long as they can provide for their family, because they know that, just like many other TPS holders know, that this opportunity that you have in this country to live here, to work here, it's an opportunity that you can't really find back home. So they came to this country working multiple jobs, but thanks to TPS, they were able to live a more stable life, because they were able to, with TPS, they were given work permits, driver's licenses, and social security numbers. And to working families like mine, these programs are extremely important, and which is why TPS has really meant so much to us.
So President Trump would probably say that temporary protected status means what it is called, temporary protected status. And if the earthquake in El Salvador was in 2001, that doesn't mean that your parents, no matter how good people they may be, get to stay here for the rest of their lives. It's supposed to be until conditions clear enough in their country of origin that they can safely go back. So why should Americans out there around the country who may be hearing about El Salvador and temporary protected status for the first time, why should they think, well, under temporary protected status, your parents and thousands like them should be able to stay here forever?
Okay, so my family is as American as any other family. My parents have been living here for over 25 years, contributing so much to our economy, to the community, paying taxes, working to support U.S. citizens like myself, like me and my 2 sisters. The way that I see it is that me and my family, that we're part of this tradition in America where, because this country is a country of immigrants. It's a place where immigrants with dreams, with a vision, they can come here, settle down, and contribute to what makes this country special. And that's the diversity, that's the dreams that people have. And so this is the same. This is an example. I mean, it's just what my parents have done, and I also think it's very immoral to send hundreds of thousands of families, of parents, of workers back to El Salvador, which is a country where there's no real job opportunities, where there's no stability, and it's a country that's still healing from the earthquake.
In fact, I see that the State Department issues what they call a Level 3 travel advisory for El Salvador. I imagine you know this, stating violent crimes such as murder, assault, rape, and armed robbery is common. Gang activity such as extortion, violent street crime, and narcotics and arms trafficking is widespread. Local police may lack the resources to respond effectively to serious criminal incidents. Yeah. Do you think that's a reason not to send 200,000 people back?
My parents have been here, since they came here, since in the early 1990s, they have not returned. And the reason that they have not returned back is because of this fear that they have. They fear that if they go back to this country that they don't really even know anymore, that they may never come back. Because again, there's no real safety and protection there. Their lives are here in this country.
El Salvador, like Haiti, is one of the countries that the president referred to in that meeting, reportedly, as an S-hole country. When you heard that, how did that make you feel?
Hearing the president's remarks towards El Salvador and Haiti and other African countries. At first, it felt very personal. I feel so much pride I feel lots of pride towards my parents' culture from the country where they came from, because everything that they've instilled in me are values that they've been passed along from my grandparents and from my great grandparents. It's outrageous that the president cannot see that it's because of my parents' sacrifices, because of their hard work, because of the people that they are, that this country is the way that it is. I think this country is very special.
That this country is the way that it is.
Yeah, I think it's very special that it can allow immigrants like my parents, who when they first arrived they knew really no English, to come here to learn the language, to learn English, to work here, to raise their children here. It's a very special thing, and it's something that I'm very grateful for. I'm so grateful for my parents being there for us every day of our lives. My parents are my role models, and to hear a president speak so negatively towards my parents, it's heartbreaking.
You feel it was toward your parents, because they might say, well, this is a double-edged sword. You're talking about how your parents shouldn't be made to go back because the country has so many problems. And so when he calls it that name, kind of country, that's a reference, his supporters would say, to a country with a lot of problems, and therefore people coming from there as immigrants might have a harder time making it here.
Yeah, I think so. The way that I hear the president's remarks, I think it's extremely racist, and I think that for example, if the administration can release a statement warning U.S. citizens, traveling to El Salvador to, warning them not to, and at the same time sending, lots of hardworking parents and families back to this country. The only way you can explain that is because of that he doesn't want people like my parents in this country, and that's the way that I interpreted it, and that's the way many other people are interpreting it, and everyone, at first they felt really heartbroken to hear this remark from their president, but also now a lot of people are really aware that that there's something that they have to do, that they have to get involved.
We have 30 seconds left. It sounds like the term American dream has resonance for you. Yes?
Yeah. My parents, to my mom and dad, when I was speaking to them, when the TPS announcement was made, we were speaking about their journey here, what it means for them to live in this country, and they told me that to my mom and dad, the American dream is that me and my two younger sisters will be able to move ahead in life, that we will get a good education and contribute to this country. And these are things. I will be graduating very soon, and I hopefully will be a high school English teacher, and I want to pass down what my parents have taught me to future generations. And yeah.
Congratulations in advance on your degree. Congratulations on your New York Times article. Thank you for coming in and sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And that's our program for today. We're here each week at this hour at the intersection of city politics and everyday life. See you midweek next week. And I invite you to tune into my radio show tomorrow morning when my guest will be immigrant rights activist Ravi Ragbeer. That's at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning on WNYC AM 820 or 93.9 FM. I'm Brian Lehrer. Thanks for watching.